Now the question popped into my head. What do players actually think of Tekken 8? I was pretty curious because we have an influx of new players to the game. And we also have a mix of longtime players playing the game currently. But this is a brand new Tekken. And I don't think we've had a new Tekken since 2015. That was when Tekken 7 was released. So I would say this is a very interesting situation, especially with the addition of the new heat system. Now to answer this question, I decided to go to Reddit and simply ask with a post. What do you guys think of Tekken 8? I wanted to ask this to see what exactly other players thought of the game and to get a glimpse into their thought process, their own unique perspectives. Now, I think there has been enough time for players to develop their own opinion. Not a wrong or right opinion, mind you, but their own opinion of the game and their own experience. And I wanted to see if I could just document a little bit of that. Obviously, I'm not going to get everything right. Some people are going to disagree, some people are going to come to the same conclusions, but it's still interesting to see what different players think, especially with a game like Tekken, when there are so many different characters and playstyles to the game. Before we proceed, I want to share with you what I included in the Tekken subreddit post. I wanted to keep things a bit open so we have like an open discussion that everyone can share what they think, but also add some direction to things so we're not moving around aimlessly. What do you think of Tekken 8 so far? The game has been out for a while now, and I'm curious about what other players think of Tekken 8 so far. Here are a few questions to get started. Number 1. What do you think of the characters in the Year 1 Season 1 pass? Number 2. How do you think the heat system has changed the game? Number 3. What are you looking forward to in Season 2? Feel free to share any other thoughts you may have on this. So I wanted to keep things open that anyone can share whatever opinion that they may have had, and I think it was actually a pretty nice discussion. There weren't too many topics, so it wasn't overwhelming for me to look through things, and I noticed that things kept being reiterated by different people, but also people agreed on quite a few things. So let's go ahead and look at some of the topics that came up, what people thought of the game, what they liked, what they didn't like. Let's go. Alright, so our first comment comes from 7Archer777. I would consider Tekken 8 so far to be pretty disappointing. Now, I can understand why players have that belief, because compared to Tekken 7, Tekken 8 does feel like a bit of a step back, but it's also because the developers are trying something new. Additionally, while looking at these comments, two words kept appearing when users described their experience. Those two words are disappointing and fun. Oddly enough, it's weird, but life is filled with these contradictions, and I believe this is where the truth lies, both with the good and the bad, because that's the reality of the game. It's not going to be all good or all bad, just like with other situations in life, right? Now, from what I can gather here, players think the game is fun, and they appreciate the attempt at making changes to make the game more interesting, but the implementation of certain changes did not give players confidence in the choices made for the game overall. One example of this would be the cash shop situation. So if you're new to Tekken, typically the Tekken series has been advertised as a game series that doesn't have many microtransactions, and it wouldn't have something like a Tekken shop or something like that. But with Tekken 8, it was handled poorly, where they implemented a shop system shortly after the game was released, but they didn't tell anyone that they were creating this. So most of the advertising did not include anything about a Tekken shop, so it actually came as a surprise. So what happened was the developers and Harada made the decision to implement the Tekken shop, but didn't advertise it, because they knew if they advertised it, people would complain, but also less people would buy it, and additionally, less people would pay for the ultimate editions, because why would you, right? You would save your money and use it in the cash shop as opposed to buying the ultimate edition. So many people felt tricked, as they rightly should, because we were tricked. That's the meat of the matter. That's the truth of the matter. But, you know, we're still Tekken fans, so we're willing to weather this storm. But I don't know how many people are going to be interested in continuing with the series if you can't trust what the people who are advertising the game say, right? But there is some good, there is some bad. It's a Tekken series, we like Tekken. It's the only 3D fighting game out right now, but I can see why many players aren't really happy with the implementation of Tekken 8. I want to also share a comment from Becker the Pecker. I hope that's not something weird, bro. I really hope that's not a weird name you got me saying. But this person's comment was, "It's my favorite fighting game of this generation, for lack of a better word. I'm a huge Final Fantasy nerd, so Clive being added was a big bonus for me personally. I'm not a fighting game savant by any stretch of the imagination, but I find the game feels fundamentally solid in the way it feels when I land an attack and such." So we can see here that there are many different players that have their own different opinions. Some like the game, some don't like the game. but different players are going to interact with the game differently, and we're seeing new players come in simply because of the addition of Clive. I wasn't aware of Clive, but there are other people that really like that character, and them seeing them in Tekken, that's going to draw them in. Additionally, the Tekken team is really good at bringing characters from other franchises into the game. The greatest example of this is Negan from Tekken 7, because I think Negan, he was from a TV show, The Walking Dead. I've never actually watched the show, but the fact that they were able to bring in a TV show character and actually have him work within the Tekken system so well, kudos to them. They did a really good job. So when it comes to building a game system and implementing characters, they're really good at that. There are other things that need work, but I think they've done a really good job at certain things here. Now, I wanted to highlight these specific comments because I think they come from two different points of view, but we can see here that players for the most part like the game. Not all like the game, mind you. Some people are more willing to complain, but there's still something good here with Tekken 8. And I think that players can see the glaring issues present in the game. Some of these issues can be fixed, while others may be harder to change. And I think that players understand that this game will be a work in progress going forward. And the developers keep reiterating that they will be implementing fixes in the future to make positive changes to the game. And as of the release of this video, they would have implemented some of those changes, like balancing / nerfing Clive, but also adding in the infinite rematch feature, which has been greatly requested by many players. So it's not that they're not listening. I think it takes time for them to implement certain changes. And also, Tekken's a very complex game. So for me, I understand it's going to be very difficult to balance a game like this. But for now, let's take a look at some of the most common themes that I've noticed in this thread. Okay, let's look at some of the most common themes that I noticed in this thread. The first one, and the major one, would be the heat system, but also additional gameplay tuning. But the heat system is the hot button topic here. Now, I would say that everyone has their own opinion of the heat system, whether it be good, bad, you hate it, or you love it. It's interesting that they decided to actually try and implement a new system in Tekken, but for me, I think it's still very immature, but there's still some time to improve it. It's just that it feels like right now we're guinea pigs when it comes to the heat system, as opposed to it being a fleshed out system and presented to us in a way that we can actually play with it and learn it. It's more of, we've played with it, we've learned it, you need to cook this a bit longer. That's really the sentiment that I'm getting from some people, but others, they completely hate it. Let's look at a comment from MiddleAd965. Man, I hope you are not a bot, sir or madam. But here's what they said. Honestly, I feel the heat system as a whole was a mistake. I never see anyone say they like it. People either hate it or begrudgingly accept it because it's there. Combining this system with buffed rage arts and power crushes, and there's a bit too much get out of jail free going on in Tekken 8, to the point where sometimes even winning isn't all that fun. Now, I understand what they're saying here, but the game Tekken 7 was a bit stale compared to 8 in the fact that you didn't have many get out of jail free options unless you were low on health. But at the same time, it felt a bit better balanced, right? If you do need a get out of jail free card, if you are low on health, that's the time to do it. But having heat presented to you from the start of the match, it seems like they wanted to give you more freedom, but instead you're kind of forced into using this system, which I think it has its good implementations, but also it's bad. So there's still time to fix it. It just would have been better if they actually took more time to implement it in a more optimized way. Most players, I think, are not happy with the implementation of the heat system, and I remember seeing where they shared that it's a bit overtuned and some characters weren't able to actually make the best use of the new system compared to others. Honestly, I think that's going to be the case even after they implement the heat system update in Season 2. I think that there are going to be some characters that fall through the cracks, regardless of how much they try to fix it. There's just too many characters in Tekken to update, and also they're going to add new characters with DLC. At the same time, a number of players actually do like the addition of the heat system because it's new and they can see where the devs are trying to go with the game, and they can see that these developers are actually trying to add new features to the game to make it more interesting. Tekken 7 was a bit more stale, but was it stale because the gameplay was stale, or was it stale because it's been around since 2015. So players had so many years to play and learn the game that after a while they know what to do, what not to do. So it's not a new game where everything's fresh and mistakes are more easily made because of lack of knowledge. I think Tekken 7 was a bit stale because it carried on for a bit longer than expected, and the professional players knew exactly what to do. They were very seasoned. They knew how to play and how to deal with different situations. That can kind of make a game stale. Not the gameplay or the game mechanics, but the game just being old. And that's natural. Alright, so the second most common issue was actually the season pass. The character choices in the season pass left people unsatisfied. Most didn't like the idea of having Eddie and Heihachi as DLC characters. In addition to that, Lydia was a DLC character in Tekken 8, but she was also a DLC character in Tekken 7. So that felt like double dipping, and players honestly felt tricked. When it comes to Clive, I think he has a less negative reception compared to the other characters. Now, he does have an overpowered moveset right now, but I think they've balanced him a bit, and they might keep balancing him. But he's the only new character to Tekken. But granted, he's not a Tekken character, he's a Final Fantasy character. So he may not ever appear again. So looking at that, the first season pass didn't include any new Tekken characters, which is a bit disheartening, and it kind of feels like they tried to extend the main roster just to get more money out of us. That's how it feels to me. But let's look at one of the opinions of someone from Reddit. We're looking at Heihachi Michima 55. So we can see a bias with this person already, but everyone has their opinion, even if it's biased. Season 1 pass, the worst season pass they've ever done, in my opinion, comfortably. Lydia, Clive, and Eddie are in my opinion examples of the worst the game has to offer. I like the new Heihachi, and the comeback was hype, but also it was kind of money for old rope. It worked though, in fairness, and has breathed some new life into him as a character. The heat system is too strong and too prevalent in every round. It's too imbalanced. Also, with some characters having crazy heat tools and some basically getting nothing, they need to weaken it overall or have it be gained as opposed to be given by default every round. Maybe some punishment for burning out, like in Street Fighter. This has the potential to be cool and interesting if they just make it more subtle. Season 2, looking forward to heat being balanced, and hopefully Infinite Rematch at least added to quick play. I say to look forward, but neither of those will happen, and I can only hope. Now, what's interesting here is that they actually introduced a patch where they added Infinite Rematch to quick play, and they're going to balance the heat system in season 2, so I think this person's going to get what they asked for. And I don't mean that in a negative way, I mean that they're going to get what they asked for. In addition, they did do an interesting job with Heihachi. I'm not really a fan of the stance-heavy nature of that first season of characters, but maybe that will change, right? It's interesting to see different people have different opinions of the heat system, but one thing is it's a common thread, bit overtuned right now. So people want to see it toned down to give it a bit more balance, so it's a less heavy-handed mechanic. I think I like how it looks when the heat animation is activated for each character. I like how it looks, but it still needs some work to actually be a more efficient tool for people to play with and against. Okay, coming in third would be balance changes. Now, this is quite a unique case to me because many people wanted there to be more constant balance changes in the game, but I can actually see both sides here. Let's look at what the community has to say here. We have a comment from DWIPSSBM. I don't know what that means. I hope it's not something weird. My biggest issue with Tekken 8 so far is the lack of balance updates. They barely touched the characters since release. We could have had a medium scale balance patch at mid-season and keep the major changes for the new season. Which I can see why you would say that. That kind of does make sense. But as I said, I'm kind of on the fence here, right? Most players wanted there to be some sort of patch in between the season to balance out the characters. But at the same time, the developers didn't want to issue out a patch because the Tekken World Tournament was actually being held quite close to the release of Tekken 8. And that would shake things up a bit too much, especially for the pros. So professional players, what I'm thinking about is the fact that this is their job. So really throwing a monkey wrench at them isn't really fair, especially with a new game and they're trying to learn this game. You don't really want to put them in a position where they're not able to compete at their best. And given the fact that the game was new, there's so little time in between the release of the game and the tournament. Of course, they're going to need more time to learn the game. Like, they're used to having time to learn the ins and outs of the game. If they change the battle system of Tekken in between the season, I'm not sure how well these professionals would have been able to actually perform. And that would have made the Tekken World Tournament a much more lackluster performance to watch, because everything would have been a bit discombobulated, right? But with the season being what it is, more, static, yeah, they were the top performing players or top performing characters like Dragunov. At the very least, you knew who the top performers were, as opposed to if they patched things out. Both points make sense. It's just, what could they realistically do? And I think implementing a mid-season patch with the Tekken World Tournament might have opened them up for more issues. So playing it safe here and taking more time to patch out the game, I can see the reason for them doing that. I can see how someone would say that it's poor planning on the company's part, but these projects take time and they can actually go over time and over budget. So it's normal for projects like this to have these kinds of hang-ups, but at the same time, maybe they could have released the game at an earlier time so that they would have had more time to patch things before the Tekken World Tournament. But I'm not a game dev. I'm not here working out the product's development schedule, so I can't really tell them what to do. Another point I wanted to bring up here was I noticed that there was negativity in response to positive comments. Now, this is possibly just me, but I noticed that people were getting downvoted when they said they liked or they loved the game. I understand not agreeing with another person's opinion, but there isn't really anything wrong with liking Tekken 8. It's a good game, it's fun. I can see why people would like it, but also the constant negative critiques and downvoting, this leads into the idea that negative critiques are more favored in the subreddit. That's been a comment that I've heard with regards to the Tekken 8 subreddit. I don't like to pay too much attention to stuff like that, right? I just think people have their own opinions, but there is definitely a situation where negativity gives you more positive feedback, not just on Reddit, but on YouTube and other types of social media. And I wanted to move into or bring up the topic of Season 2. And what I noticed with Season 2 is that many people had a lot of hope for this season. They had hope for, the heat system to get balanced. Not necessarily nerfed or removed, but balance it out so it's a bit less egregious. Additionally, I noticed that it took a while for people to really learn Tekken 8. So, given that there's more time for people to learn the game, it seems that people are getting a bit more comfortable with the game. And it actually took a lot of time for people to get comfortable with Tekken 7. So I think that's par for the course, and we're going to have more people getting comfortable with the game as it goes on and on. But also, looking back at Tekken 7, it took more time for them to actually, the developers, to flesh out the game and to build out a battle system that was fair, that people could play and feel like, hey man, things aren't always unpredictable. But we're going to have to continue to wait for that. That's the thing. It seems that people were really hopeful with the game. People really like the game. And I think Tekken is going to have a good future if they continue to bring out positive content that people like to see. I would say Tekken 8 would do really well with as everyone else said, improving the heat system, balancing it out so it's less egregious and overbearing, right? Give the characters that have weaker heat tools something, right? Give them the opportunity to actually move up with regards to the character usage. I would say for the players, give Tekken 8 some time. It's going to take some time to pick up speed and get fleshed out, similar to Tekken 7. Tekken 7 was out for probably a decade or more. And it takes time for a game like this to find its footing. It takes time for the developers to figure out what exactly do they want to do, what's the best way to go about doing it, and also what they need to fix. Because when you're trying to implement new things, things are gonna go wrong, things are gonna break, but then you can fix it, given enough time. I also think that they should put some more effort into creating new characters as opposed to bringing in the guest characters. I think a good mix is having one guest character, one new character, one like new Tekken character, but then also having two returning characters. I think that would be good. Or you have three returning characters, one new or guest, but I think that they should bring in some new Tekken characters, especially with the fact that a few of the Tekken characters that I brought in the past, they weren't very good. People didn't really latch on to them. I have a video that I'm working on with regards to who I think is going to be in Tekken going forward, but you know, those videos are a dime a dozen. I'm just trying to do one of them in the future. But yeah, I think the game right now, it's a bit rocky. Needs some work, some polish, but I still think it's a fun game. I like what they're trying to do with the game. The monetization is annoying, but I think for the most part, it's a nice product. It's not too bad, but it is kind of disappointing, not gonna lie. It's a disappointing and fun experience. It's so weird to say that, but I think the fun has worn off, and I'm starting to see myself a lot of the issues in the gameplay. But let me know what you guys think. Do you think Tekken right now needs some more work? Do you think the heat system is overpowered? What do you think of the character choices with regards to the season pass? Go ahead and let me know in the comments. And go ahead and leave me with a subscription. We're almost at 500. Thank you so much, guys. Enjoy your day.